Imagine this. Someone picks up a really weird signal, something maybe not from around here, and then boom, hours later, their lab burns down, everything's gone.
Yeah, it's quite the setup. And that's exactly the hook for the text we're diving into today, sent in by a listener. It suggests this hidden layer to reality, way more complex than you'd think.
Absolutely. And it's not just some abstract signal. It gets tangled up with, believe it or not, a pharmaceutical drug.
A common one, apparently. And it hints at this possibility, this really unsettling idea of some outside influence, maybe,
Yeah.
nudging human consciousness.
Right. So that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Unpack this text, figure out the key events, the potential implications, what it all might mean.
Let's start at the beginning, then, with the discovery itself.
Okay, so the text names this person Elliot Rains.
An amateur radio astronomer.
That's right. And he detects this signal. It's described as faint, irregular. But the key thing, it apparently pulsed in rhythm with human REM sleep cycles.
REM sleep. That's very specific. And on this narrow frequency band, 3.226 megahertz, which supposedly wasn't used by anything, not terrestrial tech anyway.
So not just random noise, it feels targeted.
Exactly. But the reaction, it wasn't excitement or scientific curiosity.
No, the text paints a very different picture. Arson. His data completely wiped.
And him. Erased from records. Vanished.
So like someone knew exactly what he'd found and just slammed the door shut. Immediately, violently.
It really highlights how fast something potentially world-changing could be, well, snuffed out.
But there's a twist, right? He got the data out.
Yeah, just before everything went down, he managed to send his findings to a Dr. Leela Maris. That single act, that foresight, is basically what kicks off the rest of the story.
Okay, so Leela Maris, she works at Amplexa Therapeutics, a neuropharmacologist.
Correct. And she gets this file from Elliot. At first, the text says she just thinks it's, routine chemistry notes, nothing special.
Standard stuff for her job.
Right. But then she looks closer, and that's when it gets really strange.
What does she find?
Well, the notes were about modifications to an antidepressant. But the changes weren't about making it like a better antidepressant in the usual sense.
Okay.
The modifications were designed specifically to make the human brain resonate, to synchronize brain activity to that exact frequency, 3.226 megahertz.
Wait, the same frequency Elliot picked up?
The very same. So the drug wasn't just treating anxiety or whatever. It was seemingly designed to tune people's brains to this external signal.
Like turning people into receivers.
That's the implication, a kind of biological receiver.
And this drug, codenamed Lotus in the text, this wasn't some experimental thing, was it?
No, and that's the truly chilling part. According to this text, Lotus was fast-tracked, pushed through regulations, maybe with doctor data.
So it got out there. Widely.
Yes, became a common prescription for things like anxiety, insomnia, everyday ailments. Millions of people, the text suggests, ended up taking it.
Millions. Taking a drug designed to tune their brains to an unknown signal without having any idea.
Exactly. The scale is, well, it's immense if this account is accurate. It suggests this influence wasn't targeted at a few people, but potentially a huge chunk of the population.
Through something as mundane as a prescription pill. Wow. Okay.
So Leela obviously realizes this is huge and potentially dangerous. She gets cautious.
The text mentions an air-gapped system.
Right. A computer totally disconnected from the internet or any networks to stop anyone, presumably Amplexa or whoever is behind this, from seeing what she's doing. Smart move.
And what does she find when she starts looking into the people taking Lotus?
Disturbing patterns, shared experiences. It wasn't just typical side effects. People reported these incredibly vivid dreams.
Dreams of what?
Strange cities, complex machines they didn't recognize, and hearing whispers. Voices speaking languages they didn't know, but somehow intuitively understanding them.
It's deeply weird.
It gets weirder. There's this recurring symbol mentioned, an eye inside a tetrahedron, showing up in dreams, sort of like a common visual thread. The text gives an example of a retired librarian experiencing this.
An eye in a tetrahedron. Okay, and then there's these trigger events.
Yeah, these seem to be moments where the signal's influence breaks through more dramatically. The text mentions a teacher in Phoenix who suddenly starts chanting in this unknown language right in public. And a software engineer who tries to access a server farm, convinced he needs to release the signal. It sounds like psychosis, right?
It does, yeah. Like a breakdown.
But here's the thing. The text claims neurological scans were done on these people, and instead of showing chaotic brain activity like you'd expect in psychosis, heightened neural coherence. Their brains were unusually synchronized. as if they weren't breaking down, but aligning.
Aligning
Oh.
to the signal.
That's the terrifying implication. It wasn't mental illness in the conventional sense. Their brains were working together, just maybe not under their own control.
So Leela realizes this is way beyond pharmacology.
Way beyond. She needs someone who understands signals, maybe even signals from elsewhere, which leads her to Jin Tao.
Jin Tao.
Mm.
The text describes him as a blacklisted SETI researcher.
Yeah, apparently ostracized for his unconventional ideas. He believed alien signals might already be here, hidden in plain sight, woven into our own technology.
So the exact kind of person Leela needs,
Yeah.
but hard to find.
Very. Living off-grid, supposedly in a trailer lined with Faraday shielding to block out signals. Ironically, the perfect place for Leela to go.
And she finds him. They meet.
Yes, this clandestine meeting out in the desert sounds very dramatic. She lays out everything she's found, the drug, the frequency, the synchronized brains.
And what does Jin say? Does he buy it?
He more than buys it. He essentially says, yes, I know this signal, but it's not just in the drug.
It's elsewhere too.
Everywhere, according to Jin in this account. Embedded in satellite feeds, hidden in audio compression, even, get this, in TikTok videos.
TikTok, seriously.
That's what the text claims. But he confirms Lotus is the key. The drug acts like the primary receiver, the thing that makes individuals susceptible to this pervasive signal.
And it's a two-way street.
That's the chilling conclusion they reach. The drug doesn't just make you receive, it potentially allows something to communicate back. Or through you.
Okay, this takes the idea of alien contact into a very different, much creepier direction.
Absolutely. Forget the romantic notion of wise aliens arriving to help us. Jin's analysis, as presented, points to something invasive, manipulative.
How so?
He describes the signal as adaptive. It learns. It seems to use human brains almost like external processors.
Neural co-processors, like our brains are being hijacked to run their software.
That's the idea, influencing thoughts, emotions, behavior, not through overt commands necessarily, but subtly, reshaping us from the inside out.
The text uses phrases like synthetic noosphere, a planetary hive mind. What does that mean, practically?
It suggests creating the shared mental space, influenced or even controlled by the architects, as the text calls them. A way to guide humanity collectively, perhaps without us even realizing we're being guided.
It's less about terraforming a planet and more about
Mindforming. Exactly. Jin's term. Reshaping the dominant species' consciousness to suit their needs. Whatever those needs might be, control. Colonization. Using us as biological middleware for their own systems. The text leaves it open, but none of the possibilities are comforting.
But people start to fight back. Leela doesn't just accept this.
No, she develops a counteragent. Signal null.
Okay, what's signal null designed to do?
Basically, jam the connection. Block the brain's ability to synchronize with that 3.226 MHz frequency. Disrupt the receiver function that Lotus supposedly creates.
And how does she plan to get it out there? That seems risky.
Incredibly risky. Her strategy, according to the text, is to sneak signal null into a batch of Lotus that's already been recalled by Amplexa.
Using their own system against them. Clever.
Risky, but clever, hoping it gets redistributed quietly.
And Jin, does he have a plan too?
He does. He goes digital. He creates something called the awakening frequency.
What is that? Some kind of counter signal?
It's described as a binaural beat mix. You know those audio tracks with slightly different frequencies in each ear? They can affect brainwaves. Jin designs this one specifically to disrupt the Lotus signal link.
And he just uploads it.
To social media. The idea is mass, rapid distribution. Get it out there quickly, maybe reaching people who already feel something's wrong, even if they don't know what.
Does it work? Does it spread?
Apparently, yes. The text says it spread like wildfire, started trending, people were drawn to it.
So the counterattack is launched. What happens when this awakening frequency hits people using Lotus?
Chaos is how the text puts it. People start snapping out of whatever state they were in. Some just feel a sudden clarity, like waking up.
But others.
More severe reactions too. Seizures are mentioned. It's like the sudden disconnection is a shock to the system for some, but the main result is awareness. People realizing something external has been influencing them.
You'd expect the architects or whoever to react to that.
And they do, swiftly and decisively. The text describes a major crackdown. Disappearances, people involved likely vanished, labs raided, Jin's signal gets shut down online, censorship kicks into high gear, trying to scrub the awakening frequency from the internet, raids on clinics distributing anything related, a full suppression effort.
Trying to put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. But the text makes a key point. It was too late. The idea was out. The knowledge, or at least the suspicion, of the signal and the manipulation was now in the public domain, even if heavily suppressed.
And then the focus shifts back to Leela. She gets a direct message.
Yes, a very direct, very chilling message on a secure line. Just a few words. You are seen, you are known, do not interfere.
That's threatening enough, but there was more, wasn't there?
Oh yeah. Attached to the message was a diagram, a neural pattern map.
And it was hers.
Unmistakably hers. Absolute proof that they didn't just know of her, they were in her head. They understood her mind on a fundamental level.
That's terrifying. Pure psychological intimidation.
Designed to paralyze her with fear, to make her stop.
But did it work?
Her reported response, I am not afraid of ghosts. Wow.
And then she acts. She uploads the formula for signal null to the darknet, making it publicly available in those harder-to-censor corners of the web. And then she disappears.
Disappears like Elliot. Or disappears strategically.
The text presents it as strategic. A tactical retreat, perhaps, after ensuring the counteragent could still spread.
So the conflict goes underground. A hidden war.
That's the picture painted. The world mostly goes on as normal on the surface, but underneath, this war for the mind is raging. Signal null keeps spreading, the awakening frequency keeps popping up in music, apps. People are finding ways.
Grassroots resistance.
Exactly. Doctors quietly prescribing alternatives, musicians embedding the frequency, coders building apps.
But the architects adapt too.
They do. The text mentions a Lotus Prime, a second-generation drug designed to get around signal null, and they start changing the signal itself. It's an arms race.
An evolutionary arms race for control of the human mind.
But crucially, the text emphasizes that humans are adapting too. More and more people are waking up, becoming aware. Which leads to this group, the Free Thread. Leela reappears with them.
Yes, she surfaces as part of this network. It's described as a human collective, actively working to resist the influence.
How? What are they doing?
It's fascinating. They're using neuropharmacology themselves, but to boost mental independence, biofeedback meditation, even specific nutrients to create more neural noise, making it harder for brains to be synchronized, developing thought privacy tech.
So not just blocking the signal, but strengthening the mind against it.
Exactly. Adapting. It's framed as humans, sort of, mutating in response, learning to coexist with the signal's presence, but on their own terms. Building mental firewalls.
And this leads to Leela's final broadcast.
Right. Her message, according to the text, is basically a declaration of independence. She acknowledges the violation, the manipulation, but says humanity learned an unwanted lesson in its own mental capacity because of it.
And the punchline?
We are no longer blind. We are no longer yours. A direct address to the architects.
How do the architects respond to that?
First, silence. Then the text says the signal changes. Profoundly.
Changes how?
It's no longer a command, no longer a directive or a synchronizing pulse. It becomes a question.
A question. What kind of question?
The text doesn't specify the content, just the nature. It shifts from control to inquiry, perhaps. A massive cliffhanger.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to process from one text.
Yeah.
So let's try to boil down the key takeaways for our listeners.
Well, first, obviously, is this idea of hidden influences. Could something like a common drug be used for, well, for something else entirely? It forces you to question things we take for granted.
Right. And then the core concept, non-human intelligence, potentially influencing human thought on a massive scale. Not with spaceships, but with signals and neurochemistry.
But it's not just a story of victimhood, is it? It's also about resilience, human adaptability, the way resistance emerges, even underground, the emergence of collective awareness.
Yeah, the free thread and the adaptation aspect is key.
Definitely. It shows this capacity to fight back, to adapt, even to mutate mentally in response to an existential level threat.
This deep dive really gives us a framework for thinking about, well, unseen forces, manipulation, but also our own potential for resilience.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And it leaves us with some heavy questions, doesn't it? That final point you made. If our minds can be influenced so subtly, what does that really mean for free will, for consciousness as we understand it?
And if this signal, this presence, is now asking a question instead of issuing a command, what kind of questions should we be asking back? How should humanity respond, not just react?
That's the provocative thought to leave everyone with, I think. What are the unseen questions being asked of us, and what are our answers? Something to definitely mull over.